Welcome to the Happiness Matters podcast, where we'll explore happiness at work and show you how to coach yourself to be happier there and more successful too, no matter what.
Morning everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. We're starting on an exciting journey all about your unhappiness and what to do about it. Yes, your unhappiness. So this week, I'm going to give you an insight into what's ahead by looking at the sources and teachers that I have personally learned from and have used in my coaching programs with others. I'll be reading you a series of quotes that I hope will give you some food for thought for the week and get you excited and motivated for where we're going next, even if we're talking about your unhappiness at work, and all your negative emotions. We're starting a journey what to do about your unhappiness, what to do with your negative emotions, and how to feel better. Last week, we talked about paying it forward and how you can pay this work forward. Thank you to those of you who have shared this podcast with others. The work ahead is going to be so interesting and I hope useful for many of you. So I hope you'll continue to share the podcast and encourage others to subscribe to the weekly new episodes. And remember, you can download an easy step-by-step guideline about how to set up and subscribe to this Happiness Matters podcast. The guideline is on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. Let's start this next Insight series with this quote from Richard Scotch from his book, The Secrets of Happiness, 3,000 Years of Searching for the Good Life. In his book, Scotch, who is a British historian based at Queen's University in Belfast, takes a walk through history to discover how we have viewed and pursued happiness through the ages and across cultures, and what we can learn from looking back at these journeys of happiness. He says, "Unhappy is the story of happiness. Everyone's journey to happiness begins from the same place, unhappiness. We start with the feeling that our lives are out of joint. We might be unsure how to repair it, but we sense the misalignment between the life we have and the life we imagine ourselves to have. This is the lover's quarrel with life." These next quotes are going to show us the shape of the next Insight episodes coming up. We're going to look deeply into our unhappiness. We're going to examine this feeling that our lives are out of joint, this misalignment between the life we have and the life we imagine ourselves to have. We're going to explore this quarrel we have with life. And just like Richard Scotch has taken a journey looking at our pursuit of happiness, we're also embarking on a mini coaching journey to dig deeper into your unhappiness and your feelings of unhappy. As a part of Series 1, this fits into the self-coaching we did in episodes 1.5 and 1.6, the gap between where we want to be and where we are now, the space in between point A and point B. We're now stopping in this gap, this misalignment, just for a while, to look at your unhappiness. So these next quotes will outline our journey. The shape of our unhappy is the story of happy. Our unhappiness is the story of our happiness. I trust you'll enjoy listening to them this week. Perhaps even put the quotes up on your fridge to keep them alive until next week. And perhaps hearing from the wisdom from the past can help you look at your life, your unhappiness, just a little differently this week. I've created a free download of these quotes for you so you can use them through the week. And you'll find them at happiness-matters.coach/free. Just in the same place as all the other free coaching tools that go with Series 1. We start with an exploration into what emotions actually are and what are negative emotions specifically. And in the spirit of exploration, Going on a coaching journey and traveling, let's go first to the travel experts, the rough guide. There's a rough guide for everything, even happiness. Well-being consultant Dr. Nick Bayliss says in the Rough Guide to Happiness, our emotions, our feelings, our passions provide not only the compass bearings that guide us, but also the fuel that drives our thoughts and actions. It is intense emotions that give us a sense that our life is worthwhile, valuable, and capable of making a vital difference. We know by the feelings in our hearts and guts who and what is most important to us. And such feelings also provide us with the energy to pursue these vocations. It is particularly noteworthy that without emotion, we are unmotivated and can't make choices. There are only two emotions, love and fear. All positive emotions come from love, all negative emotions from fear. From love flows happiness, contentment, peace, and joy. From fear comes anger, hate, anxiety, and guilt. It's true that there are only two primary emotions, love and fear, but it's more accurate to say that there is only love or fear, for we cannot feel these two emotions together at exactly the same time. They're opposites. If we're in fear, we are not in a place of love. When we're in a place of love, we cannot be in a place of fear. This is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Swiss-American psychiatrist and pioneer on how we process grief through the stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Coach Alan Seiler, creator of the ontological coaching methodology, says in his 3-book series, humans are emotional beings at all times. People are always in some mood or emotion. Moods and emotions permeate everything people do. Our moods and emotions color how the world is for us and predispose us to behave in certain ways. As we are emotional beings, there is no escape from emotions. Yet the emotional domain of our existence can be unfamiliar and uncomfortable territory at times. Ironically, we will have an emotional orientation to our emotional experiences, which is essentially that we feel comfortable with some emotional experiences and uncomfortable with others. The world's philosophers have had a great deal to say about emotions, what role they play or should play in our lives, where they come from, and what we can do with them, just as we discovered in our earlier explorations of how to define happiness. From Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics, to Descartes, Hume, and Kant, Western philosophers have considered emotions from all angles. What are they? Where do they come from? Are they different to sensations or impressions? How do they influence our cognitive processes? Are they intentional? Are they rational? And what use do they have? The range of views is summarized by psychology professor Robert Solomon in his piece, The Philosophy of Emotions. He says, the dialectic in philosophy tends to go back and forth in its rediscovery of these often neglected dimensions. Sometimes emotions are dismissed as mere feelings and physiology, utterly unintelligent, even subhuman. In reaction, emotions are then ascribed the virtues of true wisdom. They are defended as the proper masters of reason, and even the very foundation of our being in the world. Here are some interesting ones for our journey ahead. There can be no transforming of darkness into light, and of apathy into movement without emotion, said psychiatrist-psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. Existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said, an emotion is a transformation of the world. Emotions have taught mankind to reason, said Luc de Clapiers, French writer and moralist in the 1700s. The Handbook of Emotions is a good read if you're interested in anything to do with what emotions are and how we are thinking about them today. It's now into its 4th edition, and I'll link to it in the show notes for you. Another good book is The Positive Side of Negative Emotions. This looks at the role of our negative emotions in our social interactions and our cultural differences. I had fun reading up on Confucius's views on negative emotions and the impact of his thinking on Chinese philosophical thought. Mencius, another Chinese philosopher, says, for example, "One is not a human without the feeling of sympathy. One is not a human without the feeling of shame." Shame, or qi, being an essential emotion developed early on in childhood, with close links to empathy, love, benevolence, and righteousness. Particularly at work, we consider negative emotions to be inappropriate, a sign of poor emotional control, and often toxic. The Harvard Business Review weighs in with, "It's normal to experience emotions at work. Frustration, anger, fear, excitement. But how leaders handle these feelings can go a long way toward building or destroying a strong workplace climate and motivating or discouraging employees." Of course, Hollywood has also weighed in on emotions with the 2015 movie Inside Out. The film creates 5 cartoon characters representing the 5 emotions of joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear, who live inside the mind of a young girl. Through Riley's move to a new city, a new house, and a new school, the movie illustrates the emotional experiences of the human condition. Sadness says, "Crying helps me slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems." Anger says, "Oh hey, let's sleep on it, 'cause I'm sure jolly fun-filled times are just around the corner." Disgust says, "Emotions can't quit, genius." And on a scale of 1 to 10, I give this day an F. And fear says, look out. Or, as Buddha says, there is no fire like passion. There is no shark like hatred. There is no snare like folly. And there is no torrent like greed. Then we'll look at ways to consider our negative emotions through the lens of our happiness wisdom concepts. Stephen Hawking, world-famous theoretical physicist and cosmologist, "Without imperfection, you or I would not exist." The Dalai Lama, spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, "Destructive thoughts and emotions undermine the very causes of peace and happiness. If you think clearly about it, it makes no sense to think you're seeking happiness if you do nothing to restrain angry, spiteful, and malicious thoughts and emotions." On emotional intelligence, author of the popular book Daniel Goleman says, "People with well-developed emotional skills are more likely to be content and effective in their lives, mastering the habits of mind that foster their own productivity. People who cannot marshal some control over their emotional life fight inner battles that sabotage their ability for focused work and clear thought." My own coach, Brooke Castillo, adds her clear view to the EQ and EI concept, saying, "We call ourselves adults, but most of us are still functioning as emotional children. Emotional childhood is when grown adults have not matured past childhood in terms of managing their emotions. This means they react to their emotions, act out or avoid emotions, rather than taking full responsibility and choosing thoughts that will create the emotions they want to experience. So much of our programming is about avoiding feeling any pain. And the only way to achieve emotional maturity is through self-responsibility. Emotional adulthood means taking responsibility for our pain and also for our joy, not expecting other people to make us happy, not expecting others to make us feel secure, and appreciating that we are the only ones who can hurt our feelings. Blaming someone else for how we feel is a sure way to hand our emotional power over to another person. On this emotional adulthood, emotional courage, poet David Whyte writes, "Courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community, a work, a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or to do anything except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply, and then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences." Then we'll consider how useful our negative emotions might be and what we can do with them. The National Geographic explores the emotional brain in an article called "The Dark Side." The brain's supersensitivity to negative emotions emerged at the dawn of the human species. Fear, anxiety, and anger prepared the body for fight or flight. Negative emotions affect the brain more powerfully than positive feelings do. "I will not say, 'Do not weep,' for not all tears are an evil," says Gandalf in Tolkien's The Return of the King. It is far better to be under construction than to be shabby and in need of repair. The person who hasn't sorted out his life experiences acts them out in daily life, repeating negative patterns. The alchemical or therapeutic work not only liberates you from your past, it makes you a thoughtful and less impulsive person, less prone to acting on raw emotion. You also become a better leader, parent, teacher, friend. You become a person of substance, liberated from the raw, interfering patterns and emotions that are only useful when refined. That's Thomas Moore, psychotherapist and former monk, and best known for his beautiful books, Care of the Soul and Dark Night of the Soul. British philosopher and author Alain de Botton, in his book, The Consolations of Philosophy, explores Nietzsche's view on negative emotions from a gardener's perspective. At their roots, plants can be odd and unpleasant, but a person with knowledge and faith in their potential will lead them to bear beautiful flowers and fruit. Just as in life, at root level, there may be difficult emotions and situations which can nevertheless result, through careful cultivation, in the greatest achievements and joys. Most of us fail to recognize the debt we owe to these shoots of difficulty. We are liable to think that anxiety and envy have nothing legitimate to teach us, and so remove them like emotional weeds. To cut off every negative root would simultaneously mean choking off positive elements that might arise from it further up the stem of the plant. We should not feel embarrassed by our difficulties, only by our failure to grow anything beautiful from them. Or more simply put, by blues musician B.B. King, I want to connect my guitar to human emotions. Lastly, we'll go yet another step forward into why we might want to walk towards negative emotions, why we might even want them. Dr. Seuss, creator of The Cat in the Hat and The Grinch, The Lorax and the Sneetches, says, "You'll miss the best things if you keep your eyes shut." And don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Pema Chodron, American Tibetan Buddhist nun, discusses working with negativity as a powerful creative energy, as something we can harness or master for our own growth and happiness. The equivalent of holding a bull by the horns and staring it in the eyes while having to sneeze the entire time. In her book, When Things Fall Apart, she says, feelings like disappointment, embarrassment, irritation, resentment, anger, jealousy, and fear, instead of being bad news, are actually very clear moments that teach us where it is that we're holding back. They teach us to perk up and lean in when we feel we'd rather collapse and back away. They're like messengers that show us with terrifying clarity exactly where we're stuck. This very moment is the perfect teacher, and lucky for us, it's with us wherever we are. In her book, The Wisdom of Menopause, women's well-being doctor and best-selling author Dr. Christine Northrup talks about understanding, applying, and living the wisdom of menopause. She says, "Your emotions are your inner guidance system. They alone will let you know whether you are living in an environment of biochemical health or in an environment of biochemical distress. Understanding how your thoughts and your emotions affect every single hormone and cell in your body, and knowing how to change them in a way that is health-enhancing, gives you access to the most powerful and empowering health-creating secret on earth." And to give you a final taster of our upcoming journey into coaching negative emotions, I'll end with another from Jean-Paul Sartre. It isn't freedom from, it's freedom to. These are all such wonderful words. There's so much wisdom in the world, isn't there? If you want to refer to any of these going forward, don't forget the free download for you on our website. And of course, if you want to jumpstart your coaching on feeling better, on working on your negative emotions, if you want to tackle your happiness right now, you can work with me directly. You can book your online coaching session on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. I'm available for one-off coaching sessions where you need only book one session with me, and we can coach on anything that's getting in the way of your happiness and success. See you next week, where we start adding depth to this journey into our unhappiness. I will share the exact details of the journey ahead, what we're going to do with unhappy in our lives, in our working lives, and of course, any of this unhappy that spills over to you at home and your loved ones. There really is no better time to do this work together. Bye for now. I'm off for my first run since that horrid lung infection. It'll be a tough one, but I'm sure I'll feel a whole lot happier afterwards, in body and mind and emotions.
Thanks for joining us on this Happiness Matters podcast. Do join us again here next week on Tuesday. You can subscribe to this series at Apple Podcasts on iTunes, or you can sign up for it on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. That's Happiness-Matters.coach. COACH. Also, you can join our conversation on Facebook by following us there. Our Facebook page is also Happiness-Matters.coach.